I never thought a parking spot dispute would land someone in jail, but when you live in the Brookside Commons HOA in Rochester, Minnesota, apparently anything is possible. My name is Yates Feldman, and I bought my townhouse here 3 years ago thinking I had finally found a peaceful place to settle down after my divorce. The complex was nice enough, a cluster of 50 townhomes arranged in a horseshoe pattern around a central courtyard, with assigned parking spaces right in front of each unit. Mine was spot number 27, directly in front of my front door. Simple, straightforward, no room for confusion. Then winter arrived, and with it came Brenda Morrison, our HOA president. Brenda was exactly what you would picture when someone says the words HOA Karen. She was a 48-year-old woman with that signature. "Can I speak to the manager?" Haircut short, blonde, severely angled. She wore pearl necklaces even when shoveling snow and drove a white Lexus SUV that she treated like it was made of gold. She had been HOA president for 6 years, and in that time, she had made everyone's life miserable with her endless rules and regulations. The first major snowstorm of the season hit on a Tuesday in late January. I woke up to find about 14 inches of fresh powder blanketing everything. I had taken the day off work because the roads were a mess, and I spent the morning drinking coffee and watching the snow through my window. Around noon, I bundled up and headed outside with my shovel to clear my parking spot. That is when I saw Brenda. She was in the parking lot with a massive snow blower, clearing her own spot, which was number 12. But instead of directing the snow into the grassy areas like a normal person, she was deliberately aiming it at other people's spots. I watched in disbelief as she positioned herself at an angle and sent a huge spray of snow directly into my freshly cleared spot 27. "Hey!" I shouted, waving my arms. "What are you doing?" Brenda turned off the snow blower and looked at me with this sickeningly sweet smile. "Oh, Yates, I am just clearing the common areas. The snow has to go somewhere." "That is my assigned parking spot," I said, walking closer. "You just filled it with snow." "Well, if you had gotten out here earlier, you would not have that problem," she said, her voice dripping with condescension. "I cleared my spot at 7 this morning. Maybe you should be more proactive." I felt my blood pressure rising. "I cleared my spot an hour ago. You just deliberately pushed snow into it." "I did no such thing," Brenda said, clutching her pearls in mock offense. "The snow blower just blows where it blows. I cannot control the wind patterns." "There is no wind. You aimed it directly at my spot." "I think you are being paranoid," she said, starting up the snow blower again. "Now, if you will excuse me, I have work to do. Some of us take our community responsibilities seriously." Before I could respond, she turned away and continued her snow blowing, sending another spray directly toward my neighbor's spot. I stood there fuming, my shovel clenched in my fists. This was insane. She was doing this on purpose. I spent the next hour re-clearing my spot, my arms aching from the extra work. When I finally finished, I went inside and sent an email to the HOA board, which consisted of Brenda and 2 other people who were basically her yes men complaining about what happened. I got a response the next day from Brenda herself, saying that snow removal was the responsibility of individual homeowners, and that she was simply maintaining common areas as outlined in the HOA bylaws section 14.3. The next snowfall came a week later. This time I was ready. I set my alarm for 6 in the morning and was outside clearing my spot before Brenda could even get her snow blower out. I finished by 7:30 and went inside to get ready for work, satisfied that I had beaten her to the punch. When I came back outside at 8:15 to leave for my job at the software company downtown, my spot was completely buried again. Even worse, Brenda's white Lexus was parked in it. I stood there staring, unable to process what I was seeing. My assigned spot, the spot I had paid for as part of my HOA fees, the spot that was clearly marked with a sign that said reserved for Unit 27, had Brenda's car in it. And my car was still in the spot, buried under a mountain of snow that had been pushed from somewhere else. No, wait. I looked closer. Brenda had not moved my car. She had pushed so much snow into my spot that it looked like my car was not even there, and then she parked her Lexus in the spot next to mine, which belonged to Mrs. Patterson in Unit 28. Mrs. Patterson was 83 and in a nursing home, so her spot was usually empty. But the snow in my spot was so high that it completely blocked my driver's side door and half the vehicle. There was no way I could get to work without clearing it all over again. I pulled out my phone and took about 20 pictures from every angle. Then I marched over to Brenda's townhouse and pounded on her door. She answered wearing a pink bathrobe and holding a cup of coffee. "Yates, it is 8 in the morning. What is so important?" "You pushed snow into my spot again," I said, "after I already cleared it, and now I cannot get to work." "I have no idea what you are talking about," she said. "I have been inside all morning." "Your snow blower is right there," I said, pointing to her garage where the machine sat, still covered in fresh snow. "You just used it." "I used it to clear my own spot and the walkways, which is my duty as HOA president," she said. "If snow happened to blow toward your spot, that is simply physics. Take it up with Mother Nature." "This is harassment," I said. "I am going to file a formal complaint." "File whatever you want," Brenda said. "I have done nothing wrong." "Now I have a conference call in 10 minutes, so if you will excuse me." She shut the door in my face. I called in late to work and spent another 45 minutes clearing my spot. When I finally got to the office, I was so angry I could barely concentrate. During my lunch break, I pulled up the HOA bylaws and read through them carefully. There had to be something in there about harassment or abuse of power. What I found was worse than I expected. Brenda had apparently been updating the bylaws regularly over the past 6 years, and most of the changes gave her more and more authority. She could levy fines, tow vehicles, enter people's property for inspections, and basically do whatever she wanted as long as she claimed it was for the good of the community. And because the other 2 board members always voted with her, there were no checks on her power. But I also found something interesting. According to Section 22.7, any vehicle parked in the common areas, which included the parking lot, for more than 72 hours without being moved could be declared abandoned and towed at the owner's expense. I had an idea. It was petty, it was probably going to backfire, but I was too angry to care. Over the next few days, I watched Brenda's Lexus carefully. She usually drove it every day, going to the grocery store, the gym, her various shopping trips. But that weekend, a third major snowstorm hit, dumping another foot of snow. This time, I did not bother clearing my spot right away. I waited. Sure enough, around 9 in the morning, Brenda came out with her snow blower. I watched from my window as she cleared her spot, then systematically pushed snow into mine and several other people's spots. But here was the thing: after she finished, she did not go anywhere. Her Lexus sat in spot 12, gradually getting covered by the falling snow. I kept watching. Saturday passed. Sunday passed. Monday morning came and the Lexus had not moved. It was now completely covered in snow, just a white lump in the parking lot. Tuesday morning, I went outside and took detailed photos of the Lexus, making sure to capture the license plate and the fact that it was clearly snowed in and had not moved. I also took photos of the snow on top of it, the icicles forming on the side mirrors. Then I went back inside and drafted a formal letter to the HOA board. In the letter, I cited Section 22.7 of the bylaws and reported that the vehicle in Spot 12 had been parked without moving for more than 72 hours, making it technically abandoned according to HOA rules. I requested that it be towed immediately, as the bylaws required. I sent the letter via certified mail to make sure there was a paper trail. Then I waited. 2 days later, I got a response. It was from Brenda, and she was furious. "Dear Mr. Feldman," the letter read, "your complaint regarding the vehicle in Spot 12 has been reviewed by the HOA board. We have determined that this complaint is frivolous and retaliatory in nature. The vehicle in question belongs to the HOA president and is clearly not abandoned. Furthermore, your continued harassment of the HOA president is unacceptable and may result in fines or other disciplinary action. Consider this your formal warning. Sincerely, the Brookside Commons HOA Board." I read the letter 3 times, my anger building with each pass, so the rules applied to everyone except Brenda. That was how this was going to work. I was not going to let this go. I pulled out my laptop and started researching. Minnesota had specific laws about HOAs and what they could and could not do. I spent the entire evening reading through statute after statute, taking notes, building a case. What I discovered was that, while HOAs had broad powers, they were still bound by their own governing documents. If the bylaws said a vehicle could be declared abandoned after 72 hours, then that rule had to apply to everyone equally, including the HOA president. Selective enforcement was actually a violation of Minnesota law. I also found out that I could request a special meeting of all homeowners to vote on HOA matters. According to the bylaws, if 15% of homeowners signed a petition, the board had to hold a meeting within 30 days. There were 50 units in Brookside Commons, so I needed 8 signatures, including my own. The next Saturday, I went door to door. I started with my immediate neighbors, explaining what had been happening with the snow and the parking spots. Most people were sympathetic, apparently. I was not the only one who had problems with Brenda. Mrs. Chen in Unit 32 told me Brenda had fined her $200 for having the wrong color curtains visible from outside. Mr. Rodriguez in Unit 15 said Brenda had tried to make him remove his vegetable garden because it was not aesthetically pleasing. By the end of the weekend, I had 12 signatures. People were eager to do something about Brenda's reign of terror. I submitted the petition on Monday morning via certified mail. According to the bylaws, the board now had to schedule a meeting within 30 days. The retaliation started almost immediately. On Tuesday, I found a notice on my door saying I was being fined $100 for having my trash cans visible from the street more than 12 hours before pickup. On Wednesday, I got another notice saying my mailbox post needed repainting. On Thursday, Brenda herself showed up at my door with a clipboard and said she needed to inspect my unit for code violations. "You cannot just enter my home without notice," I said, blocking the doorway. Section 18.4 of the bylaws gives the HOA president the right to inspect any unit with 24 hours notice, she said, holding up a piece of paper. "I sent you this notice yesterday via email. Check your spam folder." I checked my phone. Sure enough, buried in my spam folder was an email from Brenda sent at 11:58 the previous night, saying she would be conducting an inspection at 9 in the morning. "This is harassment," I said. "This is my job," she replied. "Now are you going to let me in, or do I need to levy additional fines for non-compliance?" I had no choice. I let her in, and she spent the next hour going through my townhouse with a fine-tooth comb. She found violations everywhere: a loose handrail on my stairs, a small crack in my bathroom tile, a shelf that she claimed was improperly installed, even though it had been there when I moved in. By the time she left, I had racked up over $800 in fines. I was livid, but I kept my cool. This was exactly the kind of behavior I needed to document. I scanned all the notices, saved all the emails, took photos of everything she had cited. I was building a case. The special meeting was scheduled for February 28th, exactly 30 days from when I submitted the petition. The notice went out to all homeowners, and the agenda was simple: discussion of HOA board conduct and possible vote of no confidence in the current president. Brenda sent out her own email the next day, painting me as a troublemaker who was wasting everyone's time with petty grievances. She claimed I was retaliating against her because she had rightfully enforced community standards against me. But I was not the only one who responded. Over the next few days, other homeowners started replying to the email chain with their own stories about Brenda's behavior. Mrs. Chen detailed the curtain incident. Mr. Rodriguez talked about his garden. A woman named Sarah in Unit 41 wrote a long email about how Brenda had tried to force her to get rid of her emotional support dog, claiming it was a banned breed, even though there was no such restriction in the bylaws. The community was turning against Brenda, and she knew it. The week before the meeting, I came home from work to find my car had been towed. Not because it had been in my spot too long, because according to a notice left on my door, my registration sticker had expired, and therefore the vehicle was not legally operable and could not be parked in HOA parking areas. I checked my registration. It was not due to expire for another 4 months. But when I called the towing company, they said they had a work order from the HOA president and they were just doing their job. It would cost me $350 to get my car back, plus a daily storage fee. I paid the money and got my car back, absolutely furious. This was beyond petty harassment now. Brenda was actively costing me money and trying to intimidate me into dropping the special meeting, but I was not backing down. If anything, this made me more determined. I contacted a lawyer, a guy named David Green, who specialized in HOA disputes. I showed him everything I had documented: the photos, the emails, the fines, the towing incident. He listened carefully, taking notes. "She has definitely crossed some lines here," David said. "The selective enforcement of the bylaws, the retaliatory fines, the improper towing. You have a strong case for harassment. But here is the thing. HOA litigation is expensive and time-consuming. Even if you win, you might spend more in legal fees than you recover." "I do not care about the money," I said. "I care about stopping her from doing this to other people." David nodded. "I respect that. Tell you what. Let me send her a letter on your behalf, laying out the violations and warning her that continued harassment will result in legal action. Sometimes that is enough to make people back off, and I will come to your special meeting as an observer. Having a lawyer present might keep things civil." I agreed, and David sent the letter that afternoon. I did not hear anything back from Brenda, but I noticed she stopped leaving notices on my door. The night before the meeting, I could not sleep. I kept running through everything in my head, making sure I had all my documentation organized, rehearsing what I wanted to say. I knew Brenda would try to control the narrative, and I needed to be prepared. The meeting was held in the community clubhouse, a small building near the entrance to the complex. I arrived 15 minutes early and the room was already half full. I saw Mrs. Chen, Mr. Rodriguez, Sarah with the emotional support dog, and a bunch of other people I recognized from going door to door. David was there too, sitting in the back with his briefcase. Brenda arrived exactly at 7, flanked by the two other board members Gary Hutchins and Linda Walsh, both of whom looked uncomfortable. Brenda was dressed in a power suit and had a huge 3-ring binder under her arm. "Good evening, everyone," she said, taking her position at the front table. "I call this special meeting to order. Before we begin, I want to remind everyone that this meeting will be conducted according to Robert's Rules of Order, and I will not tolerate any disruptions or personal attacks." I raised my hand. "I would like to make a motion that we suspend Robert's rules for this meeting and allow open discussion. This is not a formal board meeting, it is a community forum." "Seconded," said Mr. Rodriguez immediately. Brenda's face reddened. "That is not how this works." "As HOA president, all in favor of suspending Robert's rules," I said loudly. A chorus of ayes filled the room. Nearly everyone had raised their hands. Brenda looked furious, but she was outnumbered. "Fine," she said tersely, "but I am still moderating this discussion." "Actually," David said, standing up, "in a special meeting called by petition of the homeowners select their own moderator. That is Minnesota Statute 303.09. Brenda's mouth opened and closed like a fish. "Who are you?" "David Green, attorney at law. I am here as an observer on behalf of Mr. Feldman." The room went quiet. Several people looked impressed. Brenda looked like she wanted to throw her binder at someone. "Fine," she said again. "Who do you want to moderate?" "I nominate Mrs. Chen," Sarah said. "Seconded," said someone else. Mrs. Chen looked surprised but stood up. "I accept." We took a quick vote and Mrs. Chen won unanimously. She moved to the front table and Brenda was forced to sit to the side, her face bright red. "Thank you," Mrs. Chen said. "Let us begin." "Yates, you called this meeting. Would you like to start?" I stood up and pulled out my folder of documentation. "Thank you, Mrs. Chen. I called this meeting because I believe our HOA president has been abusing her power and selectively enforcing our bylaws. Over the past several weeks, I have been subjected to constant harassment, retaliatory fines, and intimidation. But I am not the only one. I went through everything methodically: the snow-blowing incidents, the abandoned vehicle complaint, Brenda's refusal to follow the bylaws when it came to her own car, the sudden barrage of fines, the improper towing. I showed photos, read emails, passed around copies of the notices I had received. Then other people started sharing their stories. Mrs. Chen talked about the curtain fine. Mr. Rodriguez described how Brenda had shown up at his house with a shovel and personally destroyed his tomato plants. Sarah told everyone about the emotional support dog incident and how Brenda had called animal control on her, claiming the dog was dangerous, even though it was a 12-pound poodle mix. Story after story came out. A guy named Tom in Unit 9 said Brenda had fined him $500 for parking his work truck overnight, claiming commercial vehicles were not allowed, even though he was a plumber, and it was not a commercial truck. It was his personal vehicle with his company logo on it. A woman named Jennifer in Unit 37 said Brenda had tried to force her to repaint her front door because the shade of red was 2% off from the approved HOA color. It went on for over an hour. By the end, even Gary and Linda looked uncomfortable. "This is all hearsay and exaggeration," Brenda said when everyone had finished. "I have been enforcing the bylaws fairly and consistently. If people do not like the rules, they should have read them before buying here." "You towed my car based on false information," I said. "That is not enforcing rules, that is harassment." "Your registration was expired," Brenda snapped. "No, it was not. I have the registration right here." I held it up. "It does not expire until June," Brenda faltered. Well, I received information that it was expired. It was an honest mistake. An honest mistake that cost me $350, I said, plus storage fees. That is not my problem, Brenda said. You can take that up with the towing company. Actually, David interjected, if the HOA ordered a tow based on false information, the HOA is liable for those costs. Mr. Feldman could sue for reimbursement, plus damages for harassment. Brenda shot him a deadly look. Are you threatening me? I am informing you of the law, David said calmly. Mrs. Chen cleared her throat. I think we have heard enough. I would like to make a motion for a vote of no confidence in Brenda Morrison as HOA president. Seconded, I said immediately. All in favor? Mrs. Chen asked. Nearly every hand in the room went up. I counted quickly 32 out of the 40 people present. All opposed, Brenda raised her hand. So did Gary and Linda, though they both looked miserable about it. The motion passes, Mrs. Chen said. Brenda Morrison is hereby removed as HOA president, effective immediately. The room erupted in applause. Brenda stood up, her face purple with rage. This is illegal, she shouted. You cannot just remove me. I was elected. And now you have been removed by a vote of the community, David said. That is also in the bylaws. Section 12.8. Would you like me to read it to you? Brenda grabbed her binder and stormed toward the door, but before she left, she turned back to me. You are going to regret this, she said, pointing at me. I will make your life hell. That sounds like a threat, David said, pulling out his phone. Would you like to repeat that for the record? Brenda said nothing more. She just left, slamming the door behind her. The meeting continued for another 30 minutes. We voted to install Mrs. Chen as interim HOA president until a proper election could be held. Gary and Linda both agreed to stay on the board, and Gary actually apologized, saying he had felt pressured by Brenda to go along with her decisions. By the time I got home that night, I felt like a weight had been lifted off my shoulders. It was over. Brenda was gone, and things could finally go back to normal, but I should have known it would not be that simple. The next morning, I woke up to a loud pounding on my door. I stumbled out of bed, still in my pajamas, and opened it to find 2 police officers standing there. Yates Feldman, one of them asked. Yes, I said, suddenly very awake. We need to ask you some questions about an incident involving Brenda Morrison. My stomach dropped. What kind of incident? Can we come in? I let them in, my mind racing. What had she done now? The officers sat down in my living room, and one of them, Officer Martinez, according to his name tag, pulled out a notepad. Miss Morrison filed a report this morning claiming you have been harassing and stalking her, he said. She says you have been taking photos of her vehicle without permission, sending threatening letters, and organizing a campaign to have her removed from her position. She is requesting a restraining order. I could not believe what I was hearing. That is completely backwards. She is the one who has been harassing me. Do you have any evidence of that? Officer Martinez asked. Yes, tons of it. I ran to my office and grabbed my folder of documentation. I showed them everything: the photos, the emails, the notices, the towing receipt. I explained about the special meeting and how Brenda had been voted out by the community. The officers looked through everything carefully. The other one, Officer Park, seemed particularly interested in the photos of Brenda's Lexus. So you did take photos of her vehicle, he said. Yes, because she had been parking it for more than 72 hours without moving it, which violates the HOA bylaws. I was documenting a legitimate complaint. And this letter, Officer Martinez held up a copy of the letter David had sent. This could be construed as threatening. That is from my lawyer, and it is not threatening, it is informing her of potential legal consequences if she continued harassing me. That is completely legal. The officers exchanged glances. Officer Park sighed. Look, Mr. Feldman, this seems like a civil dispute, not a criminal matter, he said. We are going to talk to Miss Morrison and explain that she needs to handle this through proper legal channels, not by filing false reports. But I would recommend you and Miss Morrison both stay away from each other going forward. That is fine by me, I said. I have no desire to interact with her ever again. After the officers left, I called David and told him what happened. That is retaliation, he said immediately. Filing a false police report to intimidate you. We can use this. Use it for what? If she continues, we can file for a restraining order against her and possibly pursue charges for harassment and abuse of process. I hoped it would not come to that. I just wanted to be left alone. But Brenda was not done. Over the next week, strange things started happening. My trash cans went missing. Someone let the air out of all 4 of my tires twice. I found dog feces on my doorstep even though I did not have a dog. My mailbox was vandalized with spray paint. I reported each incident to the police and to Mrs. Chen. I also set up a security camera above my front door, angled to capture my parking spot and entryway. The camera proved to be a smart investment. 3 days after I installed it, it caught Brenda red-handed at 2 in the morning, dumping a bucket of paint thinner on my doorstep. The fumes were so strong they woke me up, and I immediately called the police. This time, they took it seriously. Paint thinner was a chemical hazard, and dumping it on someone's property was illegal. Officer Martinez came back, watched the video footage, and nodded grimly. That is destruction of property and potentially reckless endangerment, he said. We will need a copy of that footage. I gave him a USB drive with the video file. He said they would be following up with Brenda shortly. 2 hours later, I watched from my window as a police cruiser pulled up to Brenda's townhouse. Officers Martinez and Park went to her door, and there was a long conversation I could not hear. Eventually, Brenda was led out in handcuffs. I found out later that when the police confronted her with the video evidence, she had initially denied it was her, then claimed I had faked the video, then finally admitted to it, but said she was sending me a message about respecting the HOA. She also apparently made some comments about how I deserved worse, which did not help her case. She was charged with criminal mischief, trespassing, and harassment. The paint thinner incident, combined with the pattern of behavior I had documented, was enough for the police to take it seriously. But that was not all. When the police searched her home as part of the investigation, they found something unexpected: a stockpile of HOA funds in her personal bank account. It turned out Brenda had been embezzling from the HOA for years. Small amounts at first, but it had escalated to over $40,000. She had been using the money for personal expenses: her Lexus payment, shopping trips, home renovations. She had covered it up by falsifying the HOA financial reports and claiming expenses that never actually happened. Mrs. Chen discovered this when she took over as interim president and requested access to the HOA bank accounts. The numbers did not match up, and when she dug deeper, the whole scheme fell apart. The police added embezzlement and fraud charges to Brenda's list of crimes. Her bail was set at $50,000, which she apparently could not afford because all her money was tied up in assets purchased with stolen HOA funds. She sat in jail for 3 days before her family bailed her out. The next few months were a whirlwind. The HOA hired a forensic accountant to go through all the financial records and determine exactly how much money Brenda had stolen. The final number was $43,718. The HOA filed a civil lawsuit to recover the funds, and the criminal case moved forward. Brenda tried to fight the charges, but the evidence was overwhelming. The video footage of her vandalizing my property, the financial records showing the embezzlement, the testimony from dozens of homeowners about her pattern of harassment and abuse of power, it all added up. In May, she accepted a plea deal. She pleaded guilty to 1 count of embezzlement, 1 count of criminal mischief, and 1 count of harassment. She was sentenced to 18 months in county jail, 5 years of probation, and ordered to pay full restitution to the HOA plus damages to me for the towing incident and the paint thinner damage. She also had to sell her townhouse to pay for everything. The white Lexus got repossessed. As for me, life in Brookside Commons finally became peaceful. Mrs. Chen turned out to be an excellent HOA president, fair, reasonable, and actually interested in building community rather than wielding power. She scaled back a lot of Brenda's ridiculous rules and focused on things that actually mattered, like maintaining the common areas and keeping the landscaping nice. The abandoned vehicle policy was amended to include clear procedures and to require photographic evidence before any towing could be authorized. No one would be able to abuse that rule the way I had tried to, or the way Brenda had when she towed my car. Mr. Rodriguez got to replant his vegetable garden, and Mrs. Chen even organized a community garden in one of the unused grassy areas. Sarah's emotional support dog became a beloved fixture in the complex, and people started organizing regular social events in the clubhouse. As for the snow situation, we voted to hire a professional snow removal company to handle the parking lot during winter storms. No more individual homeowners pushing snow into each other's spots. The company would clear everything properly and pile the snow in designated areas. I ran into Gary one day while checking my mail, and he apologized again for going along with Brenda's schemes. "I should have stood up to her," he said. "I knew what she was doing was wrong, but I was afraid she would turn on me next. I am sorry you had to be the one to take her down." "It is okay," I said, "but thank you for saying that. You did the whole community a favor," he said. "Seriously, people are actually happy to live here now." That was the most rewarding part, seeing how the atmosphere in the complex changed. People started talking to each other in the parking lot instead of hurrying inside. Kids played in the courtyard. There was a sense of actual community instead of everyone living in fear of the next violation notice. The special meeting vote to remove Brenda ended up being a pivotal moment. It showed that homeowners did have power, that we did not have to accept abuse from HOA leadership. Several other HOA communities in the area heard about what happened and started re-examining their own bylaws and board structures. David told me he got several calls from people in other HOAs who were dealing with similar situations, wanting to know how we had successfully removed our president. He even gave a presentation at a local community meeting about homeowner rights and HOA governance. As for the money Brenda stole, the HOA recovered most of it through the restitution payments and the sale of her townhouse. Mrs. Chen used it to finally fix the crumbling retaining wall near the entrance that Brenda had been claiming for years was scheduled for repair, but never actually addressed. Turned out she had been pocketing the money that was supposed to go toward that repair. I learned a lot from the whole experience. I learned that documentation is everything: photos, emails, receipts, everything. I learned that standing up to bullies is worth it, even when it is scary and exhausting. I learned that communities are stronger when people work together instead of living in fear. But mostly, I learned that parking spot disputes can escalate in ways you never expect. One afternoon in late summer, I was sitting on my small patio enjoying a beer when Sarah walked by with her poodle Mix. "Hey, Yates," she called out. "Just wanted to say thanks again for everything you did. This place is actually nice now." "Thanks," I said. "Team effort, though." "Still," she said, "takes guts to go up against someone like Brenda, especially when she had so much power." Her dog sniffed around my patio, tail wagging. "What is the dog's name?" I asked. "I do not think I ever heard." "Princess," Sarah said with a laugh. "I know, super original." But she came with the name from the rescue. Princess looked up at me with big brown eyes, and I reached down to pet her. She was about as dangerous as a cotton ball. "The fact that Brenda tried to get rid of this sweet thing," Sarah said, shaking her head. "That should have been everyone's first clue that something was seriously wrong with her." After Sarah moved on, I sat there thinking about the whole saga. It had started with something so petty, Brenda pushing snow into my parking spot. At the time, it seemed like just an annoyance, something I could handle by getting up earlier or working harder. But it was not about the snow. It was about power and control. Brenda had spent years building a little kingdom where she could bully people and take what she wanted without consequences. The snow incident was just her way of putting me in my place, showing me that she could make my life difficult whenever she felt like it. When I pushed back first with the email complaint, then with the abandoned vehicle report, I threatened that power structure. And that was when she really went after me with the fines and the towing and everything else. Looking back, I was glad I had not just accepted it. I was glad I had documented everything and gotten other people involved. Because if I had not, Brenda would still be stealing from the HOA, still be harassing residents, still be making everyone miserable, and she probably would have gotten away with it indefinitely. A week after my conversation with Sarah, I received an unexpected letter in the mail. It was from Brenda. I almost threw it away without opening it, but curiosity got the better of me. Inside was a single handwritten page. "Mr. Feldman," it read. "I am writing this as part of my probation requirements, but also because I genuinely need to say it. I am sorry for what I did to you and to the other residents of Brookside Commons. I let the power go to my head, and I convinced myself that what I was doing was for the good of the community. But really, I was just being cruel and selfish. The embezzlement started small, and I kept telling myself I would pay it back, but then it spiraled out of control. I have no excuse for any of it. You were right to stand up to me, and I deserved everything that happened. I hope you and the other residents can find peace now that I am gone. I know I do not deserve your forgiveness, but I wanted you to know that I am truly sorry. Brenda Morrison." I read the letter twice, trying to gauge how sincere it was. Part of me wondered if it was just something her lawyer told her to write to look good for the judge. But part of me wanted to believe that maybe, sitting in jail with nothing but time to think, she had actually gained some self-awareness. Either way, I decided to take it at face value. I wrote back a brief note saying I accepted her apology and wished her well in rebuilding her life. It felt like the right thing to do, not for her sake, but for my own peace of mind. Holding on to anger was exhausting, and I was ready to let it go. In September, we held a proper HOA board election. Mrs. Chen ran for president officially and won by a landslide. Gary kept his position, and Linda decided to step down. 2 new board members were elected, Mr. Rodriguez and a guy named Kevin from Unit 44, who worked in property management and had a lot of good ideas about how to run things efficiently. The new board was everything Brenda's board had not been: transparent, responsive, and actually interested in making Brookside Commons a nice place to live. They set up a suggestion box and held quarterly town halls where residents could voice concerns. They published detailed financial reports so everyone could see where the HOA fees were going. They even created a website where people could submit maintenance requests and track their status. It was like living in a completely different community. One snowy evening in December, almost a year after the whole nightmare started, I was clearing my parking spot after a fresh snowfall when Mr. Rodriguez came over with his shovel. "Need a hand?" he asked. "Sure, thanks," I said. We worked together for a few minutes in comfortable silence, the only sounds the scraping of shovels on pavement and the soft crunch of snow. "You know," Mr. Rodriguez said eventually, "I was talking to my wife the other day about everything that happened last winter. And she pointed out something interesting." "What is that?" "If Brenda had just been a decent person, if she had just not pushed snow into your spot that first time, none of this would have happened. She would probably still be HOA president, still embezzling money, still making everyone miserable." I thought about that. I guess you are right. One petty action started a chain reaction that brought down her whole house of cards. "Makes you think," Mr. Rodriguez said, "about how the little things matter. How treating people with basic respect is not just the right thing to do, it is also the smart thing to do." "Or conversely," I said with a laugh, "how being a jerk can destroy your entire life." Mr. Rodriguez chuckled. "That too." We finished clearing both our spots and then helped Mrs. Patterson's son clear hers. He had been visiting her at the nursing home and mentioned needing to clear her spot when he came back. It took the three of us maybe 15 minutes total, and when we were done, we all went inside to warm up. That was the thing about community, I realized. When people actually cared about each other, when there was not some petty tyrant making everyone miserable, things just worked better. Problems got solved. People helped each other out. Life was easier and more pleasant for everyone. As the holidays approached, Mrs. Chen organized a community party in the clubhouse. There was food, music, a gift exchange. Nearly every unit was represented, and the room was packed with people laughing and talking. I found myself chatting with Jennifer, the woman who had been forced to repaint her door over that ridiculous 2% shade difference. "Did you ever repaint it?" I asked. "Or did that fine get dropped after Brenda was removed?" "Mrs. Chen voided all of Brenda's bogus fines," Jennifer said. "Saved me like $600. And my door is still the same shade of red it always was. Turns out nobody cares except crazy people with too much time on their hands." "Funny how that works," I said. "You started all this, you know," Jennifer said. "If you had not fought back, I think everyone else would have just kept their heads down and accepted it." "I do not know about that," I said. "I think people were ready for change. They just needed someone to take the first step." "Maybe," Jennifer said, "but you took that step, so thank you." Throughout the evening, several other people came up to me with similar sentiments. Tom, the plumber, thanked me for getting rid of the commercial vehicle rule that had been costing him money. Mrs. Chen gave a whole speech about how the community had transformed over the past year. Even Gary pulled me aside to say he was grateful I had exposed Brenda's embezzlement before he could be held liable as a board member. It was overwhelming, honestly. I had not done any of this for recognition or gratitude. I had done it because I was angry about snow in my parking spot, and because someone needed to stand up to a bully. But apparently, that had mattered to a lot of people. As the party wound down and people started heading home, I stood outside for a moment looking at the parking lot. All the spots were neatly cleared by the professional snow removal company we had hired. Cars sat in their assigned spaces without drama or conflict. Everything was peaceful and orderly, the way it should have been all along. My phone buzzed with a text from David. "Hey, saw the settlement came through. Brenda's payment to you should hit your account tomorrow. Congrats on closing this chapter." I had almost forgotten about that. The judge had ordered Brenda to pay me $2,000 in damages for the towing incident, the paint thinner damage, and emotional distress. It was not a huge amount, but it was something. I texted back, "Thanks for everything. Could not have done this without you." "You did the hard part," he replied. "I just filed paperwork. Enjoy your holidays." The next day, the money appeared in my account as promised. I thought about what to do with it. Part of me wanted to just put it in savings and forget about it. But another part of me wanted to do something meaningful with it, something that would mark the end of this chapter and the beginning of a better one. I ended up donating $1,000 to a local legal aid organization that helped people with HOA disputes who could not afford attorneys. Then I used the other $1,000 to buy a really nice snow blower, a good one, much better than Brenda's old machine. The first time I used it, Mr. Rodriguez saw me from his window and came outside. "That is a serious piece of equipment," he said admiringly. "Want to borrow it?" I offered. "I am happy to share. No reason everyone needs to buy their own." Word spread quickly, and pretty soon I had a regular rotation of neighbors borrowing the snow blower. I created a simple sign-up sheet on the community website, and people could reserve it for an hour at a time. It became this shared resource that brought people together, a symbol of how different things were now. In February, right around the anniversary of that first big snowstorm and Brenda's first snow-pushing incident, I was interviewed by a local newspaper reporter who had heard about the story. The headline read, "How One Homeowner Took Down an Abusive HOA President and Transformed His Community." I was embarrassed by the attention, but Mrs. Chen insisted it was good publicity. "Other people need to know they can stand up to bad HOA boards," she said. "Your story might help them." The article generated a lot of responses. I got emails from people all over Minnesota and even from other states, thanking me for sharing the story and asking for advice on their own HOA situations. I forwarded most of them to David, who was happy to offer guidance. One email stood out, though. It was from a woman named Patricia who lived in an HOA community in Duluth. She was dealing with an HOA president who sounded eerily similar to Brenda. Petty rules, selective enforcement, constant fines. Patricia said reading about my experience had given her the courage to start organizing other homeowners to petition for a special meeting. "I am terrified," she wrote, "but I know it is the right thing to do. Thank you for showing that it is possible to win against these bullies." I wrote back with encouragement and some practical tips about documentation and getting neighbors on board. 6 months later, Patricia sent me an update. They had successfully removed their HOA president and were working on reforming their bylaws. She called it a Brookside Commons miracle. That made me feel good. The idea that our struggle had helped other people in similar situations gave meaning to all the stress and conflict. As spring arrived and the snow melted away, I found myself reflecting on everything that had happened. What had started as a simple parking spot dispute had escalated into arrests, embezzlement charges, legal battles, and ultimately, the complete transformation of our community. It seemed almost absurd when I thought about it that way. Snow in a parking spot had led to someone going to jail. But really, it was not about the snow. It never had been. The snow was just the visible symptom of a much deeper problem: abuse of power, lack of accountability, and a community that had been intimidated into silence. Brenda could have pushed snow into my spot 100 times, and if that was all she had done, it would have been annoying but manageable. But she could not stop there. She had to retaliate when I complained. She had to use her position to punish me. And in doing so, she exposed herself and created an opening for everything else to unravel. I wondered sometimes if she understood that. If she had realized, sitting in her jail cell, that her own vindictiveness had been her downfall. That if she had just backed off after that first complaint, none of this would have happened. Probably not. People like Brenda rarely had that level of self-awareness. In June, I ran into Officer Martinez at a coffee shop downtown. He remembered me immediately. "Hey, you are the HOA guy," he said with a grin. "How is life in the complex these days?" "Much better," I said. "Quiet, boring, exactly how it should be." "That is good to hear," he said. "You know, that case was interesting for us. We usually do not get involved in HOA disputes, but once we found that video footage and then the embezzlement, it became a real criminal investigation. Made for some interesting paperwork." "Glad I could provide you with interesting paperwork," I said sarcastically. Officer Martinez laughed. "No, seriously though, I am glad it worked out. We see a lot of these HOA situations where someone is abusing their power, but usually there is not much we can do about it because it is technically legal. But Morrison crossed the line into actual crimes, and that made all the difference." "Do you know how she is doing?" I asked. "I mean, is she still in jail?" "I think she got released a few months ago," Officer Martinez said. "Good behavior or something, but she's got a long probation period. If she messes up at all, she goes right back inside." I nodded. Part of me hoped she had learned her lesson and would live a quiet, law-abiding life from now on. Another part of me did not really care what happened to her as long as she stayed far away from Brookside Commons. That summer was probably the best summer I had experienced since moving to the complex. People actually used the common areas. Kids played in the courtyard without being yelled at for being too loud. Mr. Rodriguez's vegetable garden flourished, and he shared tomatoes and zucchini with anyone who wanted them. We had regular barbecues and movie nights in the clubhouse. It felt like a real community, not just a collection of people who happened to live near each other. In August, Mrs. Chen announced she was stepping down as HOA president. Her husband had gotten a job offer in Arizona, and they were moving at the end of the month. "I hate to leave when things are going so well," she said at the meeting, "but we have to do what is right for our family." Everyone understood, though we were all sad to see her go. She had been exactly what the community needed during the transition period after Brenda. Patient, fair, and dedicated to healing the divisions that Brenda had created. A special election was held, and Mr. Rodriguez was voted in as the new president. He brought the same steady, reasonable approach that Mrs. Chen had modeled, and the community continued to thrive. On a cool evening in October, almost 2 full years after that first snowstorm and Brenda's initial snow-pushing incident, I sat on my patio watching the sun set. My parking spot was directly in front of me, empty and peaceful. No drama, no conflict, just an assigned parking space serving its intended purpose. My phone rang. It was an unknown number and I almost did not answer, but something made me pick up. "Hello, Mr. Feldman. This is Brenda Morrison." I froze. I had not heard her voice in over a year, and hearing it now sent a chill through me. "What do you want?" I asked, keeping my voice neutral. "I know I am not supposed to contact you," she said quickly. "My probation officer would kill me if he knew, but I had to call. I have been in therapy, and my therapist suggested I make amends with people I have hurt. Not just a letter, a real conversation." I did not say anything. I was not sure what to say. "I know you have no reason to talk to me," Brenda continued, "and if you want to hang up, I understand. But I just need you to know that I am genuinely sorry for everything. Not just sorry I got caught, sorry for what I did. The way I treated you and everyone else at Brookside Commons was inexcusable. I let power corrupt me, and I hurt a lot of people." "Okay," I said slowly. "I appreciate you saying that. I am working as a receptionist now at a dental office," she said. Making minimum wage, living in a tiny apartment, it is humbling, but it has also given me perspective. I had a good life at Brookside Commons. I had respect from the community, or at least I should have if I had earned it properly. And I threw it all away because I could not just be a decent human being. "Look, Brenda," I said, "I appreciate the apology, I do, but I do not really know what you want me to say. What happened, happened. You made your choices and there were consequences. I hope you have learned from it and that you are moving forward in a positive way. But that is really all there is to it." There was silence on the other end of the line. Then, "You are right. I am sorry for calling. I needed to hear myself say it out loud to you. Take care, Mr. Feldman." She hung up before I could respond. I sat there for a long time, processing the call. Part of me was annoyed that she had contacted me despite the probation restrictions. Part of me was skeptical about how genuine her remorse really was. But another part of me, a small part, hoped that maybe she really had changed, not that it mattered for me or for Brookside Commons. That chapter was closed. We had moved on and we were better for it. The first snow of the season fell in early November. I woke up to find about 3 inches of powder covering everything, and my first thought was of that morning 2 years ago when I had watched Brenda deliberately push snow into my parking spot. But this time, when I looked outside, I saw the snow removal company's trucks already at work, efficiently clearing the parking lot and piling the snow in the designated areas. By the time I finished my coffee, the entire lot was clear, and all the parking spots were easily accessible. No drama. No conflict. No one deliberately making anyone else's life difficult. Just a community working together the way it should. I grabbed my new snow blower and cleared the sidewalk in front of my unit. Then did Mr. Rodriguez's and Mrs. Patterson's too. Kevin from Unit 44 saw me and came out with his shovel to help. We chatted while we worked, talking about nothing important: work, the weather, the upcoming holidays, normal, boring, pleasant conversation between neighbors. It was exactly what I had wanted when I first moved to Brookside Commons 3 years ago. As I put the snow blower away and headed inside to warm up, I thought about everything that had happened. The stress, the conflict, the legal battles, the eventual vindication. It had been exhausting and often terrifying. There were times when I wondered if it was worth it, if I should have just kept my head down and dealt with the snow and the harassment. But looking at our community now peaceful, functional, genuinely pleasant, I knew it had been worth it. Not just for me, but for everyone who lived here. We had taken back our community from someone who had been abusing it for years. We had proven that homeowners did have power, that they could stand up to bad leadership and make real changes, and we had created something better in the process. A community where people actually talked to each other, helped each other, enjoyed living together. That was what an HOA was supposed to be: a way for neighbors to work together to maintain and improve their shared spaces. Not a dictatorship where one person could make everyone else miserable on a whim. I made myself some lunch and settled onto my couch, looking out the window at the parking lot. My car sat in spot 27, right where it belonged, with no snow piled around it and no threat of being towed for imaginary violations. Simple, peaceful, the way it should be, and all because 2 years ago I had refused to just accept having snow pushed into my parking spot. I had stood up, documented everything, organized my neighbors, and fought back against a bully. It seemed like such a small thing when it started. Just snow in a parking spot. But sometimes, the smallest things can lead to the biggest changes. Sometimes, refusing to accept one petty injustice can unravel an entire system of abuse and corruption. Sometimes, one person standing up can inspire a whole community to take back their power. I thought about Patricia in Duluth and all the other people who had emailed me after the newspaper article. I thought about how our story had helped them find the courage to address their own HOA problems. Maybe that was the real lesson in all of this. Not just that abuse should be challenged, but that challenging it could inspire others to do the same. That one act of resistance could ripple outward and create positive change in places you would never even know about. As the afternoon sun streamed through my window, I felt a deep sense of contentment. Life was good. The community was healthy. And somewhere, hopefully, Brenda was learning how to be a better person. Everything had worked out exactly as it should, and it all started with snow in a parking spot.